Imagine yourself at work. It's about mid-afternoon and you're bored. So you start to daydream about that trip to Paris that you took and that little cafe that you found with the cute waiter that you were flirting with, and you're eating the most amazing pastry you've ever eaten in your life. So you come out of your daydream and you're like, well, there's no pastry, so I guess I'll go get a coffee. And as you get up, you whack your knee on the desk. Now, what's real? The daydream? The version of you that's whacked your knee? The version of you that stood up, didn't whack your knee, and bumped into the person who ends up being the love of your life? What's real? My name is Karen Cheong, and in this episode of Mastering Your World Through Frequencies, we explore what is real.
This is a great question that I would really like to explore a wee bit. Okay. What is real? Because we talk about the illusion.
Yeah.
We talk about using your imagination, and we say that's real. And, well, the very nature of the word illusion means it's not real, but apparently it's real because we're living in it. So what is really real?
Yeah, that's fascinating. So I guess we have to discuss the definition of real, I suppose.
Yeah.
And for me, well, there's different definitions of real. And I think a lot of people think of real as the thing that keeps turning up over and over again. So meaning, right, the things that are predictably the same. Let's just call it.
Right.
And I would say that most people think that that is quote unquote real, meaning it's certain steps will lead to certain outcomes. The same things will create like the same kind of result. Time functions in a certain way that's predictable. And I think a lot to me, when people use the word real, means there's a predictability about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because when you say time functions predictably, right, then we're talking linear time.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
And if we talk about the science, the science is fairly new, and we are talking about the observer versus the particle.
Yeah.
Right. So that is reality as well.
Yes. And so I was just getting to that. So what I would say is that one definition that I just gave you is I think what most people think of as real.
Yes.
And what I probably would have said was real before I went on my own little personal journey of discovering. Because what I realized very young was that there was something that would influence what I thought was unchangeable or couldn't be changed, or seemed miraculous even, if it was changeable, if you were focused on something other than like the density or the physical form or the matter. So meaning I had a sense that, and for those of you who don't remember or who haven't heard this before, I mean, I got really sick when I was in my early 20s. And I ended up, after seeing a whole bunch of different doctors and different acupuncturists and different energy healers in New York City, none of it was working. So I ended up going to see an acupuncturist in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, who I happened to find through my aunt, she was the only survivor in her cancer treatment group. And she credited him, this acupuncturist that she knew. And then when I first met him, he scanned me, but I didn't know what scanning was at the time. And I didn't understand what he was really doing, but I just felt him like be aware of me in a way that wasn't just looking at me.
Right.
And I was like, whoa, what's he doing? That's not usual. And then he looked at me and he said, I know exactly what's wrong with you. You have this, this, and this. Don't worry. You'll be fine. I know exactly what to do. And he was the first person who had ever said that. And I don't know if it was his certainty or how he had scanned me, but everything he said to me felt real. But he wasn't looking at my physical body, and I knew it. And I was like, what is there after, going to see him for like 5 weeks, and I'd been really ill, and then I came out of it and was totally more like the way I am now. I was like, how is it that he was able to shift this like version of me that was like very emotionally unwell, psychologically unwell, physically unwell, and now I'm such a radically different person? Like, what is there in the unseen that causes what we think is real? And is that unseen less important somehow because we can't see it with our physical senses? So to me, the unseen, or like the non-ordinary realm, became fascinating.
Right.
And to me, that whole realm, the realm of the quantum field, that is to me more real than the reality, our solidity in many ways. And I can feel a question.
So many. I want to tie it into science a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I think it helps the people that want to believe what you're saying.
Yeah.
They really do.
Yeah.
But they are still somehow coming up against the wall that, no, but this that I can touch every morning or every day is what's real.
Yes.
What you're telling me could be anything.
Yes.
Right?
That's right. Yeah.
So let's bring in what you just said and what science is saying. So if science says, if you bring your focus onto a wave of particles, a vibrational wave of particles, you can manifest that reality.
Yeah. Well, it's actually more, to me, it's more like if you put your attention on certain patterns of waves, then the particle appears.
Yeah.
Right? Then the particle appears.
Which is the dense
which is the density, the heart, the solid.
That's
right?
probably what I meant.
Yeah.
That's why you answered the questions. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So just to help a little bit, this illusion that we're all living is because there's a collective agreement to focus on a certain wave to bring it into a particle formation.
That's right.
Which creates this thing that we think is reality.
Yes.
But what you're saying, because through this amazing doctor that probably now everybody wants to go and see, is that he maybe saw the wave?
Yeah. Well, there are different levels of the quantum field. It's an infinite field of possibility. Yeah. And what he was doing, and part of his tradition was he was one of those gifted kids. So he grew up in Burma, and every generation, the monks would look for a special kid.
Yeah.
A kid who wasn't like the other kids.
Right.
And he was one of them. Meaning he was one of those kids. Yeah. And there are lots of these kids now. Okay. So I'm not saying he's the only one, right? But he was gifted at a young age. And so the monks were like, this child is able to perceive the non-ordinary in a way that most other kids can't. So what he perceived and what he was trained to perceive is chi, or bioenergy, right? So he was very focused on that because in his training, that's what the monks were teaching him.
Yeah.
They were teaching him, how do you regulate bioenergy in the body so that the body reflects a healthy, thriving system, as opposed to one that is like in disease, you know what I mean? And
being blocked
and breaking down and getting worse, for example.
Yeah.
So that's what they trained him to do. And the thing is, that's the thing about the quantum field. It's really infinite, right? And what he was doing was learning how to facilitate the rendering, really, which I talk about a lot, which has to do with the projection of your physical body, which if you haven't watched it, you can totally go watch. I think it's episode 99, I think, where I talk about how your physical reality is rendered, where you have a spirit body, which is a sphere of light, which is the interface basically between you as consciousness. And then you need to have form because you've asked to have form. So right in the center of that sphere of light, or your spirit body, is your physical form. And it's a hologram. I know it feels real to us.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you wake up with
it hurts.
It hurts when you pinch it, or you stub your toe. Yeah, exactly. And when you have a cold.
How can that not be real?
Yeah, exactly, right?
Right.
So we believe, based on our interpretation of pain and all that sort of pleasure, all these different things, that it's quote unquote real. It's solid. To pull back away from your question a little bit, in terms of backing up a little bit. To me, the focus on consistency, meaning like I expect this to be this particular way. I expect these sets of steps to lead to this outcome.
Yeah.
All that stuff, my body to be a certain way, my relationships to be a certain way, like all that sort of stuff. We create that level of consistency by focusing on the dense and the physical, right? So therefore we expect it because we think, okay, well, this is of course how the reality works.
And we're being programmed constantly to think that way.
Exactly. And because a lot of people really value certainty, right? They really want things to be predictably the same because then we feel safe. That's why this time right now feels so unsafe because everything is like freaking up in the air and you're like, are we going to kill ourselves? Like, are we just going to nuke each other to death? I mean, it's very possible, right? And so we don't like uncertainty as humans. And so like you said, we've been very conditioned to believe a certain set of parameters of what is possible, what is real, what needs to be, even how we age, like in our physical bodies. Like, why do some cultures, some women don't experience menopause the same way as other cultures? Why is that happening? Like, why is that not a common human experience? We all have, the women are in physically female bodies. So why is it just diet? Like, why are they experiencing this differently? Is it story? Is it how their bodies age? Like, what's the difference? So the thing is, what we think of as real is really a projection of your mind, and this insistence of it being the same and the attachment to it being the same, even if it doesn't serve you.
So this is why you kind of focus in on these distortion patterns, because these are the things that are limiting us from understanding there's more than what we think reality is.
Yeah, absolutely. In order to have a different reality, something other than your conditioned habituated response that creates the same thing over and over again, you really need to have a higher degree of self-awareness to notice what distortion patterns that you're running. So click on the link in the description below to get your free self-awareness group frequency calibration.
You were talking about the conditioning and how we are trained to keep buying into this illusion that this is all there is. Right? And that's why you're really focusing on distortion patterns, because that's really what limits us for seeing beyond this, what we think is.
Yeah, exactly. So a question I get often is, how do I even know that I have distortion patterns? And why do I keep running into them? So distortion patterns are like a filter. You think that the reality looks a certain way because of your distortion patterns. So it's kind of like, imagine that you and your best friend are sitting on this beautiful beach and you're looking out over the water at this beautiful sunset. But when you look at the sunset, there's a filter of orange and then a filter of yellow and then gray and then a warbly filter. And so when you look through the filters, you don't see a beautiful sunset. You actually see a stormy sky, let's just say. And your best friend, even though you're really close to her and you're looking at the same thing, you don't see the same thing. And that's why you're triggered by some things. And even your closest people don't understand why you're triggered by them. They're just like, I'm not sure why you're so upset. You know, I'm sure they didn't mean it like that. You know, whatever it is, you know? So that's how you know that your distortion patterns are different from everybody else's. And that's how you see the world.
Yeah, and how you miss things too, right?
Yes, exactly.
There was once somebody was asking, like, to look out at the ocean and what do you see and what colors do you see? And so they were showing all these colors, and all I could see was this silver on the top. Silver. I saw the blue, but I was like, wow, look at the silver on the top of that. But then the people with me never saw the silver. So I didn't say anything. I was just like, oh, yeah, like that. But then eventually somebody said, I see silver. I was like, yeah, me too.
And you've been seeing it the whole time.
The whole time. And it was like, wow, even that was just a little tiny example of, you know, what you're, I guess you're calling them filters, but they're kind of run by distortion patterns. Right?
Exactly. So how you see the world is through your distortion. So you don't see clearly, right? You don't necessarily even notice the silver because of the pattern that's in front of you, right? You don't, just like in that sunset, you don't notice the sunset. All you notice is a storm. Right? And so that's what your focus is on. So now you have a response to the storm. You might be afraid. You might be worried that you're going to get sick. Maybe you're really afraid that you might get hit by lightning. You might, you know what I mean? Worry that it ruins your whole vacation. Like, you know what I mean? Like, all this stuff can happen as a result of what you're perceiving through the filters.
It just becomes a cascade.
It's a cascade of your thoughts and your emotions, just so everybody knows. And to make it really clear, they're the physical symptomaticness or symptomization, I'm not sure how to say it, of your distortion, right? All the thoughts you have and the feelings you have, you think you just run around having thoughts and these feelings and you're this independent being and you're doing all this stuff. You are an independent being, but it's as a result of those distortions. Like, you wouldn't have those same thoughts, and you wouldn't have those same emotions if the distortions weren't the same. So let me just give you a little example. So if, like, I have this client who was really struggling with a lot of low self-worth and also a lot of anger during COVID, because she was a practitioner who needed to see people in person. Right? So now all of a sudden everyone's afraid. They're in their houses. They're not allowed to leave. Her business is tanking. Because she doesn't have practice anymore. Okay. So when COVID ended and she, you know, people started to move around and they started to seek care again, she was really in this funk because she had started to believe that she wasn't worthy and her practice wasn't offering enough and all this sort of stuff that happened during that time for her. Mm-hmm. And as a result, she didn't realize it, but that's what she's emanating out into the field.
Yes.
Right? So she's emanating all this stuff into the field. And as a result, her business isn't picking up when the rest of like other wellness businesses are picking up now. Because people are like, oh my God, we can go out. Let me get some care. You know what I mean? And so they run out to go get self-care. But for her, her business isn't doing so well. It's only when she starts to release those filters that she starts to ask different questions for herself. She's like, starts to ask herself like, well, what can I do to serve my community? What can I do to educate people on what it is they've been through and how they can help themselves from this certain perspective? Like, you know, she shifted her questions she was asking. Now, you might not think that that's related to your distortions, but they totally are.
Yeah.
So when she started to shift her focus and her distortion patterns started to clear, her resonance started to rise, all of a sudden her business started to jump because it's a reflection of her.
Yeah.
You know? And so what is real? Back to your question, what is real? Your resonance creates an emanation in the field.
Yeah.
Okay? And your reality reorganizes around that. So meaning it is a reflection of you. Now, for some of you, you're just like, well, crap. Are you telling me that my life sucks and all these horrible things that have happened to me are because of my resonance? I'm telling you, they're a result of your resonance and your distortion, because it's like you're this signal that's broadcasting out into the field, right? You don't really think that you're broadcasting all the distortion. You think you're just broadcasting clarity, but you're not. And so it creates that. And so you create this reality where you start to have this experience for you to clear it so that you don't keep having the same experience.
Okay, right. Because I want to come to that, right?
Yeah.
Again, because we're going to focus in on what's real.
Yeah.
So you're broadcasting this invisible signal into a field. What does that mean?
Oh,
right. I mean, if I'm brand new listening to this just sounds like a whole pile of woo-woo.
Yeah.
Right? Because this is real.
Yeah, it's solid.
Where's the field?
Yeah. A lot of people have been talking about the field for a long time. Like Lynn McTaggart wrote a book called The Field. And it was this whole exploration of like, what is the field? Joe Dispenza, or Dr. Joe Dispenza, I should say, talks about the field a lot. And so does Dr. Bruce Lipton. And there's a lot of writing about what is this field, this thing that connects all of us together, from which everything comes and to which everything returns. It's the quantum field, which is infinite. So no, we can't see it, but it doesn't mean it doesn't exist just because you can't sense it with your physicalness. And that's what's starting to really light up in terms of our awareness. You know, we're starting to recognize, because our resonance is rising generally.
Okay, let's just stop there.
Yeah.
Right, because that was my next question.
Yeah.
This word resonance, this word vibration, are they the same thing?
Yes, to me, yes.
Because the resonance, this frequency resonance, I'm not sure it's fully understood. Because it from a science perspective, everything is vibration.
Absolutely.
And your cells have polarity. They give off a frequency of hertz. Every cell in your body gives off a frequency.
Yeah, for sure.
So are you saying that due to the program, Bruce Lipton says this too, due to the programming, your cells kind of going, right? I'm not really having a great life. Oh, let's get slow. Like this.
Slow down, yeah.
So, but you're saying when you clear your distortions, this cell can be back to its maybe original, intentional vibration.
Yes.
Which is faster?
Yes, it's faster. Everything in the physicalness is a reflection of you at consciousness level. And I realize that you're probably like, okay, well, what are you talking about?
I can ask you
Yeah, exactly. Well, when you're you actually, yes, can start to vibrate faster physically.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's important. But for most people, what happens for them first is they start to be aware of a shift in their own resonance or their own vibration in terms of their emotional or felt space first, meaning how they feel about themselves, how they feel about potential, how they feel about everything in terms of from how much you're triggered or how much you're not triggered to what other people believe and your ability to be with that, to new ideas that you might not have like recognized or understood before, all that starts to shift when your resonance rises. And then what will happen is your physical body also starts to reflect that. But people don't notice that typically at first.
Yes.
It's slower. It's denser than you as your emotional, like mental awareness. But you will start to feel different in your body. Like a lot of people will say, it's interesting, who've done frequency work, a lot of people will come up to them who don't know them and say, you look really young for your age.
Yeah.
Right? And it's because and I'm not saying it's like this, like you're going to revert, it's like plastic surgery and you're going to revert to like 25 years ago. But, you know, it makes you appear younger because there's a lightness about you as well that is more felt than it is just your physicalness, your physical appearance, you know, that people are perceiving. Yeah.
And I'm hoping my questions are going to get to this place that what's really real, right? So what they're also saying now is they thought that this cellular vibration was what changed folks' lives.
Yeah.
Like the emotion and the vibration or the emotion and the vibration of the cell were so intrinsically linked. Like you say, when you clear your distortion patterns, you feel better about your cell. Your cells would go, yay!
Yeah. Yeah.
But now, coming back to your point, they're realizing that these cells actually emit a light.
Yes, that's right.
They emit a light, and as you just described, your skin still has the wrinkles, but there's a shine there now that wasn't there before.
Yeah.
So, okay, so let's bring this back to real, non-real. Okay, somebody watching this, they're going, okay, so how do I get my whatever resonance vibration? How do I tap into this higher consciousness that I can't see, feel, sense, smell, taste?
Yeah.
How do I do that? Because this is where I want to cross that bridge into imagination.
Yeah.
Because everybody says imagination is real. Well, we've been taught imagination is just made up in your head.
Yes, that's right.
Now, and how is that impacted by distortion patterns?
Yeah. So imagination is really our way of accessing the nonlinear that hasn't been like drummed out of us. And I feel like it's interesting now that we're so addicted to our devices because I feel like kids are less imaginative now than they used to be, like when we were growing up, let's just say. And it's because they are being fed a narrative all the time, or they're constantly being stimulated in a very particular way. So that act of imagination, which is very natural for humans, isn't being used. And that is the mechanism which allows you to access the nonlinear, to actually experience yourself more as consciousness than just the physical. Because if I ask you right now to close your eyes and to imagine, you know, I don't know, like a purple sun, or imagine yourself stretching all the way out to the edges of the universes, or imagining yourself moving towards the sun, like in your body, or imagine yourself flying. You can do that. You can actually close your eyes. For most people, they can close their eyes and imagine that happening. You know, that happens when you read a book, you know what I mean? Or listen to like a radio show, or like a podcast, and they're reading a story, for example, right? In your imagination, something happens, right? So you see or imagine a story, and you fill in all the details with your imagination. So the thing is, they have proven that your imagination is really powerful. So I know we've been very indoctrinated to thinking that the imagined is quote unquote not real. And one of the questions I get a lot is, you know, Karen, when you're guiding a group frequency calibration, you always suggest imagine, see, sense, feel, because we're all different, right? We don't perceive in the same way. And for some people, they don't like see and they don't feel, and so they imagine, and they ask. The question is imagining insufficient? Am I doing it wrong because I can't see or feel? But the thing is, because we've been so conditioned to believe that the imagination is not real, and that we need certainty with our minds for sure that this thing is absolutely working and I'm going to have some kind of indication that it is, we will dismiss our imagination. But it's such a powerful tool. Like, if you look at all the work they're doing with athletes right now in terms of visualization, right? Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about this all the time, and many other coaches do too. So it's not just him. But when you visualize an outcome, your body believes that it's real. So like athletes will use this all the time, right? So if you have to finish a race in a certain period of time, they imagine themselves in the race, visualizing it. Or even like pilots who are what are they called? The Blue Angels. You know, that they all fly very fast in formation, whatever you feel about the Blue Angels, they are in supersonic jets in very tight formations. And what they do is together, they sit together and they imagine the exact sequence they're going to go through, and they actually call to each other what they're going to be doing, and they move a pretend stick as if they're moving the plane in that way.
Yeah.
But it's not anywhere except in their minds.
Yeah.
So, but the thing is, because they do that over and over again, when they actually get in the plane or that athlete runs that race, their bodies do what it is they quote unquote imagined. Mm-hmm. So is the imagined not real when your body follows it? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so the thing is, it's a very powerful tool. And to me, that part of the imagination is just the tip of the iceberg, mm-hmm. right? It allows you to experience you as consciousness, to allow you to break free of nonlinear habituation into an experience that's nonlinear, you know, that is of a higher resonance. So to me, when I say imagine, it's to allow those who don't have a strong feeling sense, who don't have a strong knowing sense, to go to a place that you inhabit. And because you're in that resonance, you are there. So I think imagination is often discredited. It disempowers us, actually, but it's very real.
Okay. So what's the difference then, mm-hmm. right? Because we have been known to say that you can't think your way or imagine your way to some place. Mm-hmm. You've got to change your frequency resonance. Mm-hmm. So where's that line between I'm using my imagination mm-hmm. to access a higher frequency resonance?
Yep.
But how can that be if I've got to change my frequency resonance first before I can...
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah. To me, it's to use them together.
Right.
So if you're so you have to release your distortion patterns, because the thing is with imagination is that you will return to your non-imagined reality.
Yes.
Right? So your lived experience mm-hmm. is at a certain threshold of resonance.
Yep.
So it looks a certain way, it feels a certain way, your relationships are a certain way, you make a certain amount of money. Mm-hmm. That's your lived experience. Yep. That's your physical reality, let's call it that. If you're using imagination alone, mm-hmm. what will happen is you'll have that like heart opening or whatever it is that you're imagining. Let's imagine that it's something good.
Yep.
Okay. So you imagine something good and you're having this amazing thing. But if you don't release your distortions, then your experience stays at the same resonance level.
Yep.
So the imagination is really helpful to get you to be in that resonance that you can't think your way to. But in order to actually sustain the resonance shift, you have to release your distortions. It comes back to that.
Yeah.
You have to release the stuff that makes you vibrate lower.
That's why you're saying you have to do two together. Because this is where you get these people that use their imagination and everything, and then they come back to their life as it is at that moment and get depressed.
Yeah.
Because nothing's changed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why would I use my imagination then? Nothing's changed.
Exactly.
So this is why you're saying you have to use them combined.
Yeah.
Right. So coming back to Joe Dispenza, because
mm-hmm.
I thought this was a fascinating real life. He writes about a real life situation. Mm-hmm. He broke his spine.
Yeah.
And details are in his book. He used I don't know what he used. Mm-hmm. Was it just his mind to fix his spine? Mm-hmm. So that, and they said he would never walk or run again. Mm-hmm. And he ran a half marathon or something at the end or however long. Mm-hmm. So what was he tapping into?
So what he was tapping into, without explaining that he was tapping into, like I know he was using, he says he was just using his mind.
Yeah.
I understand that because it's a way for everyone to understand that. But if you have ever gone to a Joe Dispenza retreat, he will tell stories where you're like, he's not just using his mind, right? So what he does is he actually, whether he's aware that he was doing that or not, he was really in this resonance that was much higher. Mm-hmm. So meaning he was tapping more into the field. The part of him that's infinite indestructible consciousness. And then he's working at that level of the spirit body, because that's the interface between you at spirit level, okay, you as source intelligence, as consciousness, and then in the spirit body, and then in form, right? So there's the physicalness that's you. So he was at that spirit body level where he starts to shift what it is that his rendering is like. Do you know what I mean? His resonance, he talks about it as heart-mind coherence, I think. Right?
Yes.
That's how he talks about it?
Yeah.
But what he does is he uses emotion to raise resonance.
Yeah.
That's what his like little trick is.
Yeah.
And it works. And he also will talk pretty freely these days about the beings that help to come in.
Yep.
And they will absolutely help push your resonance even higher so that you can shift how you render. So that's really what's happening. It's not just a mind thing. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that your mind isn't powerful. It's awesome. But the thing is, if you don't shift your resonance up, if you don't shift like how you render, you're going to keep creating the same thing over and over again. Mm-hmm. So to me, like, first of all, I've done Dr. Joe's work. I went to one retreat just to see what he was doing. Mm-hmm. And he's very clear. So he's awesome. I'm really glad he's doing what he's doing on the planet. And to me, it's not just mind.
Yeah.
It's actually resonance. And the thing is, a lot of what he taught, and this is now a long, long time ago because I haven't been to one of his retreats in a very long time, but he would teach that, it was about manifestation. That's how he would pull, like how people would come in because they would want healing or they would want to manifest a life they wanted. But the problem with that methodology in terms of getting your resonance up, which is helpful because that does change things for you in terms of how you feel, what can happen. It allows you to sort of like bump into that space where you don't even recognize you're changing your rendering. Like most people who have those instant healings don't recognize exactly what they're doing because they haven't really experienced it and there's no words around it. But the thing is, if you still have distortion patterns that are running of like low self-worth, scarcity, fear that you won't have enough, whatever, you could be a manifesting machine and those distortion patterns are still running. Mm-hmm. So your manifestation is coming through like the sticky glue, the layers of your distortion. So it's always going to warp what your manifestation is, despite how much you try, Mm-hmm. So for those of you who are trying and you're like, why is this not working? Because your distortions are getting in the way.
So basically at the end of all this, what I think I'm hearing is none of it is real.
That's right.
None of it. Right? But all of it's real.
Yeah.
All at the same time.
Yeah.
So you can really create the reality that you want to create, given that you understand the building blocks of that.
Yeah.
And they are clear distortion patterns. Raise your frequency resonance and don't be scared to use your imagination.
Yes.
And is there a little bit of surrender and belief and trust in there as well?
Yes, because the thing is, I feel like with a lot of people, they'll want to release their distortion and raise their resonance because they want a very specific outcome. And that was me. Okay. So I wanted to control my way. Like I was using like clearing.
Yeah.
To try to get to something that I thought I wanted, which was a direct result of certain distortion patterns of scarcity.
Yeah.
Okay. Like deeply held in my lineage. Okay. So because I was like trying to like get my way to abundance by like releasing my, you know what I mean? Like I was trying to like get to a thing that I wanted.
A plus B equals C.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I wasn't at the level where so to be really clear, I did do that. But I kind of stalled. Actually, right? So my life got better. We had more abundance, all that sort of stuff. But then we kind of plateaued. And it really had to get to a point where I had to surrender what the outcome is that I wanted in order for things to really change. Because what happened for me is that, and I'm not saying this is going to happen for everyone, but for me, because I was trying to like manipulate my way around having more when really I was running all these scarcity patterns, scarcity showed up. For me, what happened was I had to deal with those distortion patterns of scarcity and I didn't want to. Like I wanted to keep controlling. But really what happened was in my life, what started to happen was that I hit my scarcity patterns and I couldn't control my way out of them. So clients would drop away that we thought we were going to do something. Things shifted. And I was like, I can't make it happen. Like life presented itself such that I was like, oh no, I have to surrender. Like I came to that realization.
Yeah.
So even though it was scary and even though I didn't really want to do it, I had to.
Yeah. And
once I actually really did come to a certain level of surrender, that's when the abundance started to come in even more, actually. And, I don't know that you ever stop surrendering. I feel like I've gotten to surrender. I'm like, yeah, that was really deep surrender. And then life's like, yeah.
5 minutes later, you watch your husband make a cuppa and you're like, don't do that now. Oops. Didn't surrender.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So really, like I want to sum this up.
Yeah.
There is nothing. I feel really sorry for the clients that are watching this and think there's some certainty in this podcast.
Yeah, I know.
Because basically there is none.
Yeah. No,
right? There is no certainty that this is real or it's not real. There's no certainty on anything that we've said. It literally is about clearing your programming and your conditioning. Kind of like trying to create a blank canvas. So that the access to something different is available.
Yeah.
If we just kind of sum it up like that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I feel like control, right? So a lot of people think that if I have control over something, then I'll be safe, right?
Yeah.
It will lead to this outcome. But how many times have you planned something to the T, done all the work, done all the prep, done all the stuff, and then it doesn't show up at all like how you planned?
Yep.
Yeah, right? Like something shows up. It doesn't matter how perfect you've been. Honestly, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Something comes up.
That's right.
So like control, which is illusory in the sense that you think you're going to get a certain outcome, life is really like that. Because whether you want to recognize it or not, everything is actually shifting all the time. Yeah. That's the nature of the quantum field. It's all wave. It's all potential. So the more that you try to make it a certain way, what happens is that you could get that for a certain period of time. And for some people, they're so afraid to let go of that. They die with it.
Yeah.
You know, they want to have the experience and it will always be that way. But for those of you who are watching, who want something different, it's about allowing yourself to release your distortion patterns enough and come into, like you said, this surrender space where it's, to me, like it's about being fluid enough. It's almost like becoming water, right? Where it's like, okay, I'm matching the field. So the field is wave. I am wave. Okay. So it doesn't mean that nothing I want happens and I'm just lying here passively, you know, waiting for some unknown superior force to dictate everything to me. It's not like that.
Yeah.
But it's recognizing that what you're creating doesn't come, that's in the highest alignment for you and is the highest resonance, isn't what your little mind thinks.
Yeah.
It's something that will call you forward so that you keep rising in your resonance. So you keep learning. And so that you come to this recognition eventually of who you truly are, which is source intelligence and form. And you recognize, because you know, you and I talk about being a creator being all the time. And you're like, well, isn't that just like control of your reality? No, because when you're at that resonance truly, where you're embodying like a creator being, you recognize that like you have access to everything. So there's no fear in the same way. So there's no need to control. The need to control a certain outcome is because you don't believe you're actually going to get there.
Yeah. I also think as well, I don't think it hurts to say it again, right? That once that a certain amount of your distortion patterns leave, it's not like they are gone forever. And that's the beautiful thing about this life. It's ever unfolding and you find out all these amazing new things about yourself.
Yeah.
But you get stronger.
Yeah.
That's the first thing that happens. They're not so scary when it happens now. And there's more surrender in there. And the other thing that I've noticed, and I think you've said the same thing, your desires or your feelings on needing something are far less than they ever were when I first started the journey. Yes. Because that level of surrender and trust is far greater. Yeah. That the unfolding is something that's exciting. Yeah. No matter how challenging it might be for a fleeting moment. Yeah. It's kind of like, okay. Yeah. Bring it.
Yeah, exactly. It becomes fun. And I think that's the thing we forget often as humans is to play. And I feel like, so to answer your question at the very beginning, what's real and what's not real? Well, as you said, it's both because it's like nothing is real and everything is real in a way. Yeah. You know, because everything is real because it's a reflection of the quantum field. Nothing is real because it's an illusion that we collectively create together.
And it's your resonance that's reflected it.
Yes, exactly.
So of course it's going to change the minute your resonance changes.
Yes.
So is it real?
Exactly. And the other thing too is that people always think, I did, you know, when they're manifesting, like I have to create this, and this is when it's going to show up and it's got to be this specific thing and blah, 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 blah. It doesn't. Like the softer you are with it, it's kind of amazing. You can change something at literally the second in which it's coming into form. Yeah. Because I've done that and I'm like, whoa, that really works.
Yes. Well, that happened to me the other day in the cafe. My car went dead for some obscure reason in a car park. And, you know, people were there and I thought, God, what I really need is Clem. You know, because he's a mechanic and he's amazing with all that kind of stuff. Anyways, I ordered my cuppa. I went to turn around and who was right there? Clem was right there. I kind of looked like, whoa. And I realized it wasn't what I hadn't gone, I must manifest Clem. No. Anything like that. I was just like, wouldn't it be great if Clem was here? Because, man, he'd be fixing this in no time. Yeah, you know? Exactly. And then let it go. Yeah. And then turn around and he's right there. I know. It's so awesome. I went like this. Is he real?
Knowing Clem, he probably gave you a funny look.
I I can't believe you're here.
Exactly. In the perfect timing to fix your car.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like I realize that it's hard for your mind to understand the apparent paradox of nothing being real, like everything being real and everything being illusion and all, like not real. It's kind of like all of it, you know?
Yeah.
But that's really what it is.
I can't wait for the GFC for this one. I mean, is it going to be real? I don't know.
Well, I feel like it will allow you to raise your resonance, which is the thing that gets you to the place where you start to recognize, to me, the quantum field is what's real. To me. Because it's the source of everything, you know? And so to me, in my perspective, that's what's real. And so in order to access that field in a different way, other than in just your habituation or just through your mind or just through fear or just through emotions of scarcity or whatever, you have to release your distortion.
I mean, we could go on about this forever, especially when you start talking about the quantum. I mean, that is a topic alone that probably would need 3 episodes.
Probably.
Or more. Anyways, yeah. Thanks for this conversation. That's just awesome. Because there's a lot of people are kind of struggling a little bit with, well, what is real and what's not real? So, yeah. You're a brave woman taking that discussion where we went to today. Thank you.
Thank you. To have a better, more abundant, more glorious experience of life, you need to release your attachment to who you think you are, because you're just creating the same thing over and over again. So click here for my next video for your free group frequency calibration that I've created specifically for this episode in order to help you to release that attachment so you can start to experience something better and new.